Welcome to Daf and Hand, Zevachim Daf Hey. Yotzim Upanef Hashem Lekev Lekev Say Nation grant us the merit to learn and study and understand today's Gemara. Ki Hashem Yitn Chachmim Piv Das Esvina. Today's Daf is dedicated for Pinchas Ben David Arya, my father-in-law. May his neshama have an aliyah. Anyone who wants to send any questions or sponsorships or dedication, I can be reached at dafinhand@gmail.com, dafinhand@gmail.com. Okay, let's get underway. So we're on a roll over here. What we did so far is we're talking about korbanos, bring the sacrifices in the temple. We explained it has to be done with the proper intentions or for proper reasons. And if you mislabel it and do the wrong type of korban or the wrong owner of the korban, it becomes no good. And we said there are three kinds of no good actually. There's the regular that it's no good and it gets ejected from the base of Mikdash, from the temple, or it is good. Or most of our cases where we said it's no good, the owner is not credited, kind of like gets disenfranchised. However, the korban still continues on its path, which is what we said most korbanos, except for chatos, which is a sin offering. There we have a problem because once it's no good, it's brought specifically for a sin. If the owner either died or doesn't need a kapar, no longer needs this forgiveness, which is a discussion in itself, then the chatas is no good and cannot be brought whatsoever. That's it. But all other korbanos, when they're no good, all that means is the owner is discredited. Yet we still the owner is discredited, but the korban continues as is. In Asham, which is also a sin offering, we're going to discuss, even though it should be similar to a chatos and should not be able to be brought, but we're going to learn that the chatos specifically has this restriction and not an Asham. Before we get underway, one more introduction. I want to remind you the word nirtza or rotzoi or it's found favorable is something similar to the word by Kaddish or Chatz on Pesach night, Seder night, and the last one is nirtza. That means it's found favorable to Hashem. So when we say nirtza, it means either the korban worked or it's not nirtza, the korban did not work. Okay, today's daf we're going to address the following question. Having discussed it, it cannot be mislabeled. The Mishnah told us clearly that most korbanos, when they are mislabeled, they are still kosher, they're still good. Just the owner is not credited. The Gemara is going to address right away this anomaly. How can that be? Make up your mind. It's good or it's no good. If it's good, great. If it's no good, then it should be ejected from the base of English. How are we having that is good, that is no good, meaning, okay, you don't get credit for it, sorry, it's not the korban, but we're going to continue the korban as it is anyways. And that's what the Gemara is going to get into right now. So, Daf Hey, page 5, line number 3. Rama Rish Lakish al Ma'ui Bei Midrashu Umakshu. Rish Lakish was laying on his stomach, and he asked the following question. Now, just what's going on over here, many times, two people walking down the street, and you say, remember we had the discussion, we like standing next to the red car, and we had this certain discussion. So it's a memory aid saying that at that time when he was in Beis Medrash and lying in his stomach, whatever the incident was, he asked the following question. And you just follow. In Kesherim Haim, if the korbanos are kosher, yirtzu, then they should be credited to their owner. Vim ein moritzin, if they're not nirtzu, if they don't bring the proper credit, why then they should be ejected? Why are they brought? I mean, either or, either is good or is no good. Read Rabbi Lazar, because it's not going to be the same Rabbi Eliezer in our Mishnah. We have this concept in other places also. It's not such a surprise where if the owner dies, then the children still bring the garbage and kashem. They're kosher, but they're no longer credited to for forgiveness for the original owner. Of course, he does get some credit. Just even nowadays, if somebody donates something in the name of his father gets credit. So this korban is brought somehow, I'm sure, in some heavenly calculations, the original owner gets some credit. But the basic, it's not a kapara, it's not a forgiveness for this basic sin. Ditzanan, as we learned, A woman who gave birth has to bring a chatos and also has to bring an oil. As we said, chatos is more a sin offering, and the oil is more of it's not a sin offering. So the discussion what kind of sin did just because she gave birth is not a sin, not for now. But Isha Shavichatas, a woman who brought her chatas, who makes and she died before she brought her oil, Yuvi Yorshim Oilasa, let the inheritors, basically the bar mitzvah sons, they should bring in oil. Oilasa, if she brought her oil mace and she died before she brought her chatas, Lo Yuvi Yorshim Chatasa, because as we said, chatas cannot be brought after the owner has passed away or got his kapor out of the way. So you see over here we have a case where the woman did not yet bring her oila, and yet we bring it in her name, even though she does not get a kapara, and the korban is valid. So don't be so surprised in our Mishnah. This is it's not a new concept. Yes, the owner does not get credit, the owner is not credited, and we bring the korban anyways. It's not such a surprise. So he answered him, I understand oil. Okay, great. And probably shlomim and other korbanos also. However, osham, which is more of a sin offering, not as a chatas, but it's same it's similar into a chatas. If somebody was supposed to bring a sin offering of osham and then he dies, his children may no longer bring this osham. Minolon. How do we know that you're allowed to bring it? If somebody, our Mishnah said, if somebody, not chatas, but an asham, if somebody mislabeled the asham, then we still bring it. But why? If somebody dies, we don't bring the asham afterward. Or Malay, haray mechul kasa b'tida. Good point. But exactly there is somebody in the Mishnah, in our Mishnah, which says like you, asham too cannot be brought. And therefore, you asked me a question, and we spoke about oila. We spoke about general korbanos. General korbanos, we have the concept that they are no longer credited but brought. So that's not a problem. What about Osham? Well, Osham is not brought, so how can we say it's credited? Okay, I got an answer for you. It's the second person in the Mishnah, and coin thing would be good. So it's right where it stops. So what are you telling me? This is the great man who gives me such a simplified teretz. Come in, Mishnah Shlema. I'm bringing you the general Mishnah. We know general Mishnah where it's brought without a specific name is because Rabbi, the compiler of our Mishnahs, he had said that this is the way the halacha is. That's the strong point of the Mishnah. I'm bringing you the strong point of the Mishnah. Where Osham is good, what Amatli Rabbi Eliezer, and you're bringing me the side person Rabbi Eliezer where it's no good. You're not answering my question. You brought me, yes, there is someone else, a peripheral answer. But that didn't answer my question. I have to bring my own teretz. If I can't get a teretz anybody else, I'll speak up for myself. We had a plus as earlier, we learned it before that why you call it the nether, why you calling it in the double, why you calling it in the nether. But to Kidul El, as we learned earlier, that you bring it improperly, you bring a nether and it's improper, it loses the status of nether, maintains the status of a minimal korban of Nidavim, which is a lower stat, which is I'm going to call it lower, but it's like a different status. It's a generalized status, and therefore, even if we have clear in the pasuk is telling you that if you have a korban and something goes wrong, in most cases there are exceptions to that, but most cases it's still valid as a korban, albeit that the owner does not get credit for it. So our Mishnah is very great, and don't be so surprised with our Mishnah. Yosef Reb Zeira. So we've answered it. I've sourced it to you. You asked me a question. How could that be? We have by Neder and Nedova, and it's not a problem. Yosef, at this point, however, you still didn't get away with the Osham business. Yosef Reb Zeira Reb Yisrael Bar Ab Yosef Gabe Yosef Kamre. They were sitting these Amoraim. Were sitting here and they were asking Kashla Rish Lakish Osham. Rish Lakish asked about Osham, Misa, which is not brought after Misa, but Anasula Tamid Moitzes Sechum, which is brought by Never and David. You also missed the point. He asked me. He said, granted, I'll understand Oila and I'll understand Neder and David, but I don't understand Osham. And you ask, you coming back to Neder and David again? Here we go again. Let's say but the neder and the dover, it should come but not be credited, because that's what we learn from the Pasuk. Osham, which is a sin offering, loy lesekral, cannot be brought all together because it's not included in the neder and the dover business. And let's say Osham cannot be brought all together. And our main part of our Mishnah says Osham can be brought. So I got a problem with this. This is how he was saying it earlier. This is what he's saying. We have a pasuk. It says the samach is yodoi and al roich achatos. The shochet ois lachatos. When we bring a korban achatos, we shech it for achatos. Oisa it the shma kashera. If it's back, it's kosher. Shloy shma psula. This criteria, that this strict parameter and criteria that a chatas which is no longer brought properly is invalid, is strictly, the word Isa tells it only this. Other kodshim which are brought not for proper purpose remain kosher and they're good. So it's a unique stringency to korban chatas, but other korbanos, when they're no good, the general, like I've mislabeled it in my mind, either owner or designation or the style of korban, it remains kosher, albeit not credited to the owner. Yochel Yirtzu, maybe the owner should get credit for it also in the heavenly books. What you bring out, what you mentioned, as we said before, it's no longer neder, it's an adult. Now, just as an aside, I'm sure he gets some kind of credit or something for it. I mean, if he's doing it is on the plus side, not on the negative side. I don't have the heavenly calculations, obviously way above my pay grade. However, the basic korban which you're supposed to bring, that is not a valid korban anymore. I'll propose to you from what all that you said. Maybe let's come to the following conclusion. I'm going to give you a different conclusion. Habab ben neder ben adova, something's neder and adova, as we said in our pasuk leisav loylirtza. Plus, explain to us al nedarim and nedovas, let them be brought, albeit no credit to the owner. Osham, which is not in this pasuk, we excluded it from chatas. I propose to you, not just should it be, don't say it's no good. I'll propose to you that it can be brought and it is credited to the owner also, because not neder and nedova, it's been excluded from chatas. So I have very good possibility to say that yes and yes, it's good and it's credited also. Rabbiya, no, that don't. The advice is no. I'm not going to take that. I'm not accepting that. Osham b'meritzi loy matzazavet. You cannot push that. That's pushing it already. You want to tell me Osham can not just do we say it's like not like a neder and nedova, that it's not credited. It is credited. It's good and it's credited. I'm not going to accept that. You know why? I'll prove you from oil. My oil, the regular korban oil, which is a lower level korban. How do I know that? She'ein chaperes is not brought to make a kapara, not brought to have a korban come and counter a sin that a person made to Hashem, and to have acquire forgiveness. That must be a really high level korban. That's an osham. An oilam is not brought for that. So an oil is lower level. Therefore, since it's lower level, perhaps over there, and therefore it's and still we say ein maratza that it was brought improperly. It is not valid. Osham, which is so much higher. I would think the criteria is so much higher, and the bar that was set is so much higher. Which is used for kapara ending she'ein maratza. What I'm saying you is you can't say that osham is going to have is going to count. If an oila which is not for kapara has a lower bar, the moment I misdiagnose it, I misdesignated, it's valid but not credited. An osham which is so much of a higher bar to cross, and over there we're going to say that it's going to give you that it's going to give credit also. No, mal oil. Don't make away with the oil. She can call oil has a uniqueness that goes completely on the mizbeach. as opposed to asham which just gets eaten. So maybe oil does have a high bar. So no, the shlamim that does not have such a high bar because it does not get completely burnt on mizbech, yet it's good but not credited. So that's they're not going to accept that. You know why? Malish Shlomish going to in this Zachin, it does have a high bar. It has all these other things. It has to be brought with oil and wine, and have to we lift it in certain ways. But oil here. So the oil which does not have these, the chazer din and back and forth. Loy roy said the uniqueness of oil, which is kolol, is not written by the shlam. Roy is not by the shlam. Loy roy said the uniqueness of shlamim, which is that it has comes with wine and oil and various other things. Roy said like the oil. That's how the shavuot shebehen. But the like the lowest common denominator, the equal parts of them shebehen and kachim, they are kaddish. V'shachna shloy l'shmon, and by shechted it improperly, kisher and they're kosher. Ve'im rutzim, they're not credited. Afni ovi osham, she kaddish, it's holy. V'shachna shloy l'shmon, it should be kosher. Ve'ein maratza, and it shouldn't be it shouldn't be giving, and you don't get credit for it. So we say, you wanted to learn from a equal, from a double, from the lowest common denominator of an oiler and a shlomim. No, these can you know why they're stringent? Because they're a public korban. Since they're public korban, so maybe over there, which is a higher level, if it belongs to the entire community, maybe that's why it will not credit. But an asham, which is maybe lower in that sense, that it's not a public korban, maybe over there the owner can get credit. No, toida yichiyach look the korban toida, which is not which is not a public. So malatoidish can in lechem oilish lechem. The korban toida which is brought for thanks has with it the lechem. You have to bring 40 breads, various forms of bread. So you see, toida is also very stringent. And the oil, so to counter that, oilish tomichichi, that they are not so stringent. They don't have this stringency of toida. Because they're then a back and forth. Loy roy zeh, the stringency of toida which has bread, roy zeh, like the oil and shlamim which don't have bread. And this is not the uniqueness of oil and shlamim, which they go all the mizbeach, or they have the wine and oil, like the Torah does not. Tzad Shavuot Shemen, but the lowest common denominator, Shem Kachim, they're holy. The Shchata and Shloi Lishman, nevertheless, in the Yeshechted without the proper intention, they are kosher, but Ve'enim Maratza, and they don't give credit. Afuni Ovi Oshim, I won't let you say what you wanted to say, that Oshim should be credited. I would learn Oshim this Shi Kodesh or Shachtish Shloy Lishmon, or Shachted without the proper intention. It's kosher, but Einim Rutza, and it's not Maratza, does not give credit. No, Malatzad Shavuot Sheben Shein Boin Beneder Nedova, because they do come with Neder Nedova. So therefore, you cannot learn your Oshim to say that it is you don't have the Kal B'Choyim to give me a problem, and I put to you that that maybe Osham can be credited. El Amarov, we know the answer is we learned from Zoysa Torah, the pasuk which we had before. We had yesterday Zoysa Torah Osham Lechatel and Meluyim in various forms. He Kesha Kasam L'Shlomim. We compare Osham to Shlomim, and Ma Shlomim Shem Kachim their Kodesh. The Shachna Shloy the Shmon, the Shechtin without proper intentions, Kesherim, by the Ein Maritzin, of the Osham. Don't try and learn the way you want to. The Osham does get credit, She Kodesh, and does not get credit. So we're comparing Osham in this pasuk to Shlomim, and therefore does not get credit. Even though the pasuk also mentions Chatas, we're comparing it to Osham. And why Osham more than Chatas? My Chaz is the Akshid L'Shlomim, Akish L'Chatas. No, the Torah already said earlier Isa, and therefore we don't Chatas itself. It's not like Chatas, specifically not like Chatas, and Chatas is not credited, but Osham is not. We've eliminated comparing Osham to Chatas. Chatas is unique. and everything else is different. So therefore, compare Osham to the Shlomim and the other ones, and say just as the other ones, if they're no good, if we don't accept it, if there's a problem, they like be mislabeled or misdesignated, then the Korban will not be credited, but it still will be good, and an Osham also will still be good, and therefore at the beginning of our Gemara, where we had this anomaly, which we were trying to understand, how can you have such a thing as a Korban be kosher and yet not credited? And we answered because we learned it from this clear pasuk telling you the neder and the dove, the Torah specifies there is such a thing. I have no problem with that. The Torah says if it's a neder and it's done improperly, it still remains holy. It's nedava. Obviously, it's not credited, but the owner is disenfranchised. But we lower it to nedava, and it's good. And asham, we wrote about asham. Maybe asham should be different because it's a higher kind of a korban. It's back for forgiveness. No, we have a pasuk telling you steer the asham towards shlomim, and don't steer it towards chatas, and asham is included in the entire package that korbanos which are misdesignated or mislabeled remain kosher but are no longer credited to the owner. Great. We've had a problem, we've answered it, and we're good now. Now we're just going to we're going to kind of like a procedural question. We're going to discuss something before. Yosef is something relative to what we just said before. Yosef Rav Hina, Rav Nachman, and Rav Hina and Rachman are sitting. Yosef Rav Sheshes Gabein Sheshes with them. Yosef would call Amar, and they said as follows: Kashi Rish Lakish started off his debate by asking the following question: Osham Duli Osalach Misa. Osham cannot come after Misa, and that's why we had a whole series of discussion regarding Osham, because Osham cannot come after Misa, and therefore, why is it? How we can deal with the Osham? It's different than all the other commands. Lezer could have answered him, Osham Name Oslach Misa. Osham can come after Misa, can come after the owner died, and there was no different than Neder and Nadav, which caused our whole issue of the previous page. The Rishesh is no. You know in what sense Osham can be brought after Misa? Meaning that if the owner dies, and then we take the Korban Osham, take this Korban, we let it pasture till it gets a blemish, and disqualifying blemish, we sell it, and from the money we bring fresh Korban. Osham my Korban, the moisture for its value. You can have a chatas also in such a case where if somebody wants to bring chatas, he's worried he might lose it, so he brings two chatas, and it says one will be my chatas, and the other one will be kind of like a backup. Whichever one ends up being the backup will be for something else, and that you could bring. Chatas avgav the korban muteris, but miruch money he. That starts as no. Osham Osham also says the word he. Osham he. So that Osham he has a different purpose. He la'achik Torah Emoram he b'ksiv. As for after everything was brought, the Tanya, as we learned, Avul Osham loy nemar boy he el achar Torah Emoram, only after Emoram. He atzmoy and im loy ktira Emoram kosher. And if it's not telling you that the Osham, even if once we brought the Emorim, once we've done all the avodas, the Emorim, the follow-up services don't disqualify the Osham. That's what it's coming from. The Elihi Lam, at least what's coming. If I take an Osham and I send it out to pasture, and even though I didn't get blemished yet with Shachto Istam, kosher. Nittig and loy nittig loy. That's what that's what's teaching us, that even if as long as I sent it out, if I hadn't sent it out altogether, then I shechted for Osham, it would be disqualified. But once I sent it out, it's no longer disqualified, and it's okay. My time it stays as it is. So therefore, in actuality, when Rish Lakish asked Rabbi Yezer that the question of Osham, what about bringing an Osham? I can bring an Osham after it gets disqualified. The answer is yes. He could, after the owner dies, you could have answered him. Yes, you could have brought the Osham after the owner dies. You could have answered him that. But the more had a better discussion out of it, so the more left that alone. This is brought down by the Chazon Ish that that this is that in reality, Eliezer could have answered what Rish Lakish asked him. Okay, so that's one point. Now again, one more point. Now regarding the issue of, we're going to get a whole discussion now of inheritors can bring the korban in the name of their mother, their father, and will they do they acquire ownership of the korban when they bring it? Yosef Rav Nachman Rav Sheshes, Yosef Rav Adar Nachman Sheshes was sitting. Yosef Rav Adar Masna Gabein, Rav Masna was sitting with them. Yosef Rav Karmen discussing the following question. How do come Rav Lazar? The teeny beboin lachanisa shem kasherim. Rav Lazar said we find that we could bring the korban after the owner dies. The ein maratzin, and however it's not credited. Why leme leirush lokish Anamoly we could bring the korban after the owner dies, and they would be and it would work. It would be credited, and we know that's true. When the mother dies, the children bring the oil. They do bring the oil. They bring the oil, but it's not. You can't count that. Your lettuce and he yielded. The mother gave birth, so she gets she gets the kapara. She gets this korban for her. But now Miyaldo, the children, they didn't give birth. They don't need to bring this oil. They're bringing it because it's a good thing, and there must be some heavenly accounting how to help the mother's neshama. I understand that, but they're not looking for any childbirth-related korban. But to this we say, Maskul of Ase, Iman Lema, and really? And who says the mother who's bringing the korban? Normal case, mother has childbirth, she brings the korban, she has this korban for her childbirth issues. With that, she also gets many forgiveness for other peripheral sins or peripheral problems. I would use such a harsh word as sins, but peripheral heavenly issues that she didn't do properly, and she gets a kapar with that too. She had a few positive commandments that she did not do properly, or that she didn't do altogether. Wouldn't she get a kapara of forgiveness for the positive commandments that she neglected to do? Of course, it would count for that. If she would have, in addition to bringing the childbirth issue, she would have positive commandments that she negated to do. It will be included in the kapara. He'll also get this kapara. So therefore, don't say. So therefore, So then they would get a kapara. So they could bring it. So it is marat. Remember the kanile. Okay, now we're going to get into a separate new discussion from here till the end of the daf of our daf. When the yorshim, when the inheritors, children usually, when they bring the korban, do they inherit the korban that they bring, or are they just bringing the korban, or do they acquire legal ownership, or they just bring without legal ownership? Now, of course, no one's going to take it away from them, but the legality of the legal ownership of this animal, does it transfer to the children, or are they actually bringing the parents' korban to the Beis Mikdash? And we're going to discuss that now. Remember, apparently the kanilu, they do acquire it. That's how the children can bring the oil and they can make a kapara. That's not so. And one of the korban mincha, there are many kinds of korban. We can go deep into the woods and discussing them. However, the korban, these are animal korbans. There is a mincha, which is a flour korban, and that is also brought. There is an interesting rule. All the other korbanos may be brought in partnership. The flour, the mincha, may not be brought in partnership. So what happens if a father has a korban mincha and he passes away and he has two equal sons who at this point have inherited the flour? Can they bring it or not? They're shutrim. So he says, Haniyach mincha, the Gemara says, holding out by 1, 2, 3, 6 lines from the bottom. Haniyach mincha l'shnei bonav, if he left over mincha for his two sons, umeis, and he died, we bring it. We don't have to worry about shutras. Bring the mincha, has no shutras. Now this clearly shows that they were not koined, because if they would be koined, it would be nishar shitras. He's talking about kanile nefesh amrachmanim. It says nefesh, only single person and not partners cannot bring the korban mincha. We allow the children to bring the mincha to the father died, yeah, then they will not be allowed to, unless we actually say that they're not kohenet. So this seems to be proof that they're not kohenet. By the oil, we said we brought proof they were kohenet. Now we're bringing proof that they're not kohenet. And Morris jumps 1 second. Like Kani, that they're not kohenet. Well, Rabbi Yochanan, are you telling me that children are not kohenet? Now we're going to come. I'll tell you another introduction. There's something called tumura. Tumura, there's a whole masechta on it. What tumura means is if someone decides is bringing a korban, he designates this ox will be my korban, and then later on he changes his mind. This ox is too scrawny, I'm embarrassed, or I'm doing better financially. It's too scrawny. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed from Hashem, embarrassed from people. Whatever the reason is, I'm going to switch it for a much nicer, fatter, more respectable looking ox. You're not allowed to do that. It's a whole separate discussion. You bring something for the king, for the Hashem. You can't decide, no, I'm taking it away from you. You're not allowed to do it. And if somebody transgresses and does switch the designation of one animal to another, even if the second animal is a better one, they are both holy. The new one gets this holy status and the old one doesn't lose it. He gets a various sin and they're both holy. However, this only if a single person owns this animal. Partners, if they own it, they cannot do this. Tumura is not effective by them. So now, somebody left the baby for 2 children, and he died. Created, they could bring in the Aimamara because they're 2 children. If the 2 children inherit the animal, hey, but I understand that because the Havalei Kishutim, they become the 2 children who inherited are now Shutim from the page. Above on the top. Cannot do tumura, and that's apparently because they're inheriting it. It's not the father's anymore. Then there should be tumura if they do that because it still belongs to the father. So you see that they are kohenet. So which one is it? Yes, kohen or not kohen? If they will make Tamura, the rabbi says a Yerush that even though normally they're not kohenet, but regarding this factor of Tamura, we will say that it could be a problem, and even though they're 2 Yorshim, they would Echad Meimer, one of them can make Tamura, even though he's not kohenet, the Ein Shnein Memor. Mascular Yaakov Minhar Koid Elmat, if you want to tell me you have this specific language, Elmat Gaba Mais specific Gol. This is actually a side issue. No need to get bogged down on it, but regarding Meister Sheni, the person redeems it, has a right to redeem his father's or his own Meister. Gol, Rabbis is a Yorish, that Yorish also has a right to redeem Meister Sheni in Yerushalayim. Before it gets to Yerushalayim, one can and 2 cannot. That you want, and that's not the halacha. Even the father alone can do it b'shutfus. So you can't point out to me and ask me how can I say Homer Yomer tells you that even one Yorish from Gol Yigol is different because that originally Shuttim can do it altogether. Tomorrow a Shuttim cannot do it. But in any case, let's get back to our question. And now you just dug yourself a ditch. If you want to tell me that by Tamura they are kohenet, they acquire it, that's why the Chad Meimer, 1 son can make Tamura, 2 sons will not. So that is as long as you say that they are kohenet. Apparently, you just proved it that you are kohenet, and it should be a question to all the other instances where we prove that you're not kohenet. So now you showed you are kohenet. But if you want to tell me they were not kohenet, it will be a difficulty. I'm doubling down. I'm proving that if you say they were not kohenet, it wouldn't work. Then how is 1 son acquiring it? Somebody who makes something, who designates something to the base of Mikdash, to the temple, and wants to redeem it. He has to add an extra 1/5. It was one thing. If 2 people bring a korban and one person brings the korban in name of the second person, the second person becomes the one who it's like kind of axiomatic that the one who is getting the kapara, he's the one who's designated owner. Therefore, if one person brings the korban in the name of the second person getting the forgiveness, it's only the second person who can affect it tomorrow. And the third thing, somebody who gives his produce to somebody else's truma, toivus, and noshaloi, which is a separate issue. But in any case, you see that that he is an owner, so he does acquire it. And now we've left with by mincha we've shown does not acquire it. By oile we've shown he does acquire it. Here by tamura he also acquires it. Well, which one is it? So the answer is mekavia loy mechapra and mekupya mechapra. The main part he does not own it. It's not a kapara. There and the peripheral korban, the peripheral forgiveness works. But this is telling me is like this. It's because it's a kind of like a quasi owning because a korban is meant to be a full kapara, and if there's no full kapara, you don't really own it. Therefore, this korban, for example, by the oil where they inherit it, they're not really inheriting it. They're inheriting it only in regards to the peripheral forgiveness. That's why when we said earlier, we asked an oila is not maratza when it's given over. You're right. It is not maratza in its main. It doesn't do ritzu. It's not credited in its main thrust of korban. Only in the peripherals. The peripherals are not really don't really count. So therefore, regarding to the tumura, regarding to the changeover, over there the peripheral is enough to cause a problem. And regarding to mincha, to two children who inherit the mincha, the peripheral is not enough to cause a problem. They didn't really inherit it. In regards to the oila, that the sons who brought the oila, the peripheral is not a real kapara. Therefore, we continue to maintain that a korban oila can be brought if it's misdesignated. It is not maratza, does not give credit, and which is what we would entire first part of the page where we were asking how come a korban is that how can you have a misdesignated korban can be non-credited but still brought, because that's how we have the pasuk by Neder and Dover, and everything seems to be falling in place. So just a quick instant wrap up. We've discussed the entire concept of how can it be that a korban, how can it be that korban should be no good, miscredited, disenfranchised, and yet be okay? Yes, we have a pasuk clearly. Ashur, we compared it to all the other korbanos because we pasuk of the Toidu v'Lishlamim, and we did not compare it to chatas, because chatas is Isa. So we explained how the phenomenon works. We explained Asham, that Asham also is, as we said, is similar to Nedorim and Dovis. We also touched upon that whether the inheritors, whether they inherit or not, we basically said that it's not a real inheritance, it's only peripheral inheritance, which in many cases doesn't work. Okay, that's today's stuff. We're finished. Again, any questions or sponsorship or dedications, you can reach me at stuffintehand@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you understand.